Hello and welcome to World News here on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Voting has begun in Poland's presidential election after polling stations across the country opened their doors at 7 a.m. local time. Nearly 29 million Poles are eligible to cast their vote. The ballot papers include the names of 13 candidates. An electoral silence began at midnight on Friday and will remain in effect until the last polling station closes at 9 p.m. on Sunday. During this time, all forms of campaigning, including public events, online posts and publishing opinion polls, are banned. Violations can result in heavy fines if no candidate secures more than 50% of the vote. The race will go to a runoff round between the top two contenders on June the 1st. Voting is also underway all across Romania in the second round of presidential elections, and according to recent surveys, hard-right nationalist George Simion and centrist Bucharest Mayor Nicușor Dan appear neck and neck. The 2025 presidential elections were called after the 2024 vote was annulled following allegations of foreign election interference. Eurosceptic Simion decisively won the first round of the ballot on May the 4th, with some 41% of the vote, triggering the resignation of leftist Prime Minister Marcel Ciolacu, the collapse of his pro-Western coalition government. Ultra-nationalist Simion is backed by Călin Georgescu, the far-right winner of the 2024 elections, banned from running due to election interference allegations. His opponent, Dan, a founder of the reformist Save Romania Union Party, is running independently on a pro-EU ticket, reaffirming Western ties, support for Ukraine and fiscal reform. Over 18 million voters are eligible to cast their ballots until polls close at the end of the day. US President Donald Trump announced on Saturday that he will speak with Vladimir Putin on Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time.
According to the U.S. president, the central theme of the call will be, quote, stopping the bloodbath that is killing an average of more than 5,000 Russian and Ukrainian soldiers a week, as well as trade. Trump added that he would subsequently speak with the Ukrainian president and various members of NATO. Commenting previously on the peace talks between Kiev and Moscow and Turkey, which Putin failed to attend, Trump argued that nothing would happen in Ukraine until he had met with the Russian president.
Putin is just afraid of bilateral talks, says Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who briefed Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney on the Istanbul peace talks during their Saturday meeting in Rome. The two leaders met for the first time ahead of Pope Leo XIV's inauguration.
Mr. President, welcome. Welcome to this corner of Canada. And may I say, in every corner of Canada is Ukraine. The Canadian people stand in steadfast and unwavering support of your leadership, of the people of Ukraine. We admire what you're doing. We admire your commitment to peace, as you've demonstrated again this week. And we underscore that there can be no peace without the full support and participation of Ukraine, and that you have our absolute support.
I want to thank for, as you 100% rightly said, about Canadian people unwavering support from the very beginning of this war. We are thankful to your people, and of course I want to share with you some brief about our peace talks in Turkey.
Yes.
I think that it's important. It's important when two sides want to finish the war, and we really waited for Putin, and he didn't come. We think that he's afraid of bilateral, just direct talks. But anyway, I think that the decision of exchanging of prisoners, war prisoners, very important. 1,000 people, it's a lot, and I hope we will get this result. And of course, we have to make more pressure on Russia, on Putin, to really to make peace as quick as possible. And of course, unconditional ceasefire is very, very important, and that's why we need to pressure on him, more pressure, more sanctions. We are thankful to your packages of sanctions and the European leaders, and of course, the United States of America, and I want to discuss it, and your presidency in G7.
Yes.
All these things are very, very important.
In a conversation with TVP World, Janusz Reiter, former Polish ambassador to the United States and Germany, reflected on the peace talks between Russia and Ukraine in Turkey. He also highlighted the role of the United States in the process and Europe's attitude towards it.
The Europeans are doing a lot to preserve unity with the US. All European leaders speak about productive dialogue with President Trump, and sometimes even pretend that there is more unity than there is. So hoping that this positive interpretation will encourage President Putin not to go away. So it's the right thing, but the hope, of course, is that Europe will not be doing that alone. The hope is that Europe will be joined by the United States. Only then the sanctions will have enough weight. Will the US impose sanctions? We have mixed messages from Washington, as always, but this is exactly that's the game, with not quite clear rules, but there is no other choice.
US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who is in Italy to attend the inaugural Mass of the US-born Pope Leo XIV, commended the Vatican's advocacy for peace in Ukraine. The Pope called for authentic and lasting peace in Ukraine and spoke with President Volodymyr Zelensky.
So we are grateful for their long-standing efforts, not simply on trying to broker peace, but on the exchanges of prisoners. There are children that have currently been taken from their homes that the Ukrainians would like to see returned, and the Holy See has been very involved in that regard. So we'll talk about that and all of it, and obviously always grateful for the willingness of the Vatican to play this constructive and positive role.
Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz says the EU will ramp up pressure on Russia to end the war in Ukraine by drawing up fresh sanctions at its meeting next week. Merz was speaking on Saturday during a meeting with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni in Rome. His comments come after talks on Friday between Ukraine and Russia ended without agreement on a 30-day ceasefire.
Die gestrigen Gespräche in Istanbul.
Talks in Istanbul fell short of our expectations despite the maximally constructive attitude of the Ukrainian negotiators. At least the delegations were able to agree an exchange of prisoners, but Russia has so far refused to accept the demand for a comprehensive and unconditional ceasefire. President Putin himself was not prepared to come to Turkey. His troops are continuing their attacks today with undiminished vigour. We will therefore continue to increase the pressure on Russia. On Tuesday, we want to bring the 17th sanctions package into force in the European Union. Among other things, this will target the so-called shadow fleet in the Baltic Sea. The Commission is already working on further proposals. I support the Commission's proposal to start work on European measures against the Nord Stream 2 pipelines, for example.
Troops from Poland, Romania, the Czech Republic, Lithuania and the United States took part in a simulated offensive and defensive combat mission on a training ground in Bemowo-Piskie. Organised by the 16th Mechanized Division of the Polish Army, the exercises are part of the multinational NATO Griffin Lightning 25 manoeuvres, which are multi-domain drills designed to test the operational readiness synchronization and preparedness of the Allies. Susanna Jurek reports.
Simulated offensive and defensive maneuvers. This was the task of the Allied Armed Forces training in the northeast of Poland today. The armed forces partook in a series of drills in a simulated urban area which was captured by enemy forces. Their tasks included the infiltration of enemy lines, recapturing the opposing forces as well as the occupied areas.
Armored transporters, also the K2 tanks, which was on the ground over there attacking enemies, but also the Air Force's F-16, and they were attacking from the ground and from the air. They were attacking 2 buildings over there.
The training ground in the northeast of Poland is situated just over 100 kilometers away from the Suwałki Gap, which has been identified as a strategic choke point for the NATO alliance. The territory, which is on the border of Poland and Lithuania, is the shortest crossing between Belarus and the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad. The tensions around the area have intensified since the Baltic states, as well as Poland, joined the NATO alliance.
Mainly this, small piece of ground is a connection between Central Europe and Baltic states, especially now when the number of critical infrastructure in this terrain is increasing. The good example, is the power line between Poland and Lithuania, and probably, as everybody knows, the Lithuanians cut off the electricity from Russia, and now everything is delivered through this narrow piece of terrain.
The exercises carried out here in Poland today are part of the broader Griffin Lightning 25 exercises. These exercises aim to ensure that the NATO alliance has the operational readiness, capability, as well as is able to deploy at speed should an enemy provocation occur, most notably from Russia or Belarus. These exercises aim to draw from experiences from the previous theatres of war and ensure that the alliance has the equipment as well as domain and strategy necessary and ready for the modern theatres of war. For TVP World, Susanna Jurek.
Pope Leo XIV will hold his inaugural Mass in St. Peter's Basilica on Sunday, marking the formal start of his papacy. Tens of thousands are expected to gather for the ceremony, including numerous world leaders and dignitaries.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who is supposed to head the U.S. delegation together with Vice President J.D. Vance, has already touched down in Italy. Other dignitaries expected in attendance are Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, President of the European Commission Ursula von der Leyen, and King Felipe and Queen Letizia of Spain, to name a few. Polish President Andrzej Duda has also confirmed his participation. Sunday's Mass is also important because the Pope will give a homily, an initial manifesto of his papacy, underlining the religious and social themes of his focus. The approaching Mass will mark the beginning of the Pope's term.
And that's all from this bulletin, but we will be back on the hour, so don't go away. Bye-bye.